It's lovely to see so many of you here. It's such a pleasure to have so many parents wanting to come in and listen to how you can support your children. So we are the Achievement Centre team. I'm not sure if I've met some of you before and you've met some of us before, but for the rest of you, so we are the inclusion team for St Mark's School. So this is Miss Beatrig, who is the FS Senko, who manages all of the areas around inclusion for all students, whether it be students with additional needs, gifted and talented, students with English as a second language, and basically anything that really we need to do to support you to make sure your child has the best time at school. This is Miss Vicky McCowan, who is our primary Senko, so she does the same job but over the primary phase. And this is Mr Nick Hall, who is our secondary Senko. So it's just really nice to be able to introduce ourselves to you so that if in the future you have any questions or concerns, you know who to look out for. If we can't answer your questions, we will always make sure we find somebody who can. And we're here to work with you and with your children and with the staff in the school just to make sure that as much support as possible is in place so that nobody misses out. So today's session is really around sort of 4 different areas, and it's about establishing routines and boundaries, which are obviously really important to get in place at the start. It's about having healthy sleep routines and bedtime routines and the things that you shouldn't do. It's about actually creating healthy relationships with your children and amongst your children and other children, and also amongst school staff. And we're also going to look at healthy screen time. So they're kind of 4 areas that they link all together because all of them are about having boundaries in place and having expectations and knowing what's the right and wrong things to do with it. So we're going to work through separately. We're each doing a separate part, so you don't have to listen to one of us the whole way through. So I'm just going to pass over to Miss Beatrig so that she can carry on.
Okay, so establishing boundaries and routines. Obviously, all of your children at school are used to a consistent routine. The days are pretty much the same here at school. And for that reason, they're able to predict what's expected of them. They come in, they settle quicker, and they follow that routine. So our advice for parents is the same, really. You know, consistency and routine helps in terms of setting boundaries, helps in terms of your children being able to predict what's expected of them and essentially comply in terms of how we would expect them to behave. So predictability is important. It reduces anxiety in children. Children who know what's expected of them, know what's expected for that day, know what's expected for their week, are able to settle. Their anxiety is reduced. We have lots of children here at St Mark with and without additional needs who need that predictability. However, children with additional needs need it more. They need to be able to know what's expected of them in order to reduce that anxiety, regulate themselves and settle and get on with their day. So here at school, it's a lot easier for us to do. We've got a timetable. They see the same teachers, they have the same lessons, pretty much every day is the same. If it's going to change, we give them advance warning about that, and it reduces their anxiety. At home, it's different. If you think of the school holidays, every day is different, but you can support your child to reduce their anxiety and to settle through different strategies that we'll talk about after to increase that predictability. Independence, we all want our children to be independent. But in order for them to be independent, they need to know what's expected of them. So having daily tasks, daily routines that they can tick off and say, yep, I've done that. As simple as make the bed or put my plate away or put my cup away after breakfast. Simple things that they can do, daily tasks that increase their independence. And behavioural expectations. We need consistency. We need consistency with how we expect our children to behave. If we say something, we stick to it. If in school, you know, the rules are there, children know what's expected of them. It is harder at home, of course it is, but if you have some simple, consistent boundaries that don't change, that you stick to, it helps a child to understand what's expected of them, and you will see improved behaviour. So how? This is an example of a visual timetable. So if you walk around Sunmark, every class has a visual timetable. This means at the start of the day, the teacher comes in and they talk through what is expected of that day. This would be an example from FS or maybe Key Stage 1. Obviously, higher up the school, they have their own timetables. But if you think that timetable lets them know exactly what is going to happen in their day, no matter what their age is, it doesn't matter how it's presented to them. But this is an example of something that you could use at home. It could be real life pictures, it could be pictures of your bathroom, it could be pictures of their bedroom, it could just be Google Images, it could be written. You know, if your child is able to read, you can just write it down, what's expected of them that day. They can tick it off if they need to once those activities are done or once they've been through that, or you can just talk through it at the beginning of the day. This is what's going to happen, and you leave it there for them to be able to refer back to. This is really helpful in the holidays. Holidays are a really tricky time for children. They don't know what's going to happen. It's a change in routine. Lots of you are nodding. So a visual timetable or a visual schedule, you could do this for the week, or if you need to, you can do it per day. Keep things visual, keep them consistent. Do not run, but walk. So this is something that we talk to our teachers about all the time. Be specific. You don't want them to run. Well, what do you want them to do? You want them to walk. So think about the language that you use with your children. Using do not, using that negative, doesn't actually tell them what you want them to do. So think about the language, think about the instruction that you're giving to your children. Be specific, be consistent. And praise and positive engagement. So, you know, we are a positive education school. We don't necessarily use reinforcers. You know, in FS, we have something called gems in a jar. So every time something positive happens, they put a gem in the jar. Higher up the school, they obviously have points related to their houses. Positive reinforcement is the best way to improve behaviour. Negative reinforcement doesn't. You know, we need to be consistent, we need to have those boundaries, but we need to praise the behaviours that we want to see. That will then give an internal boost, essentially, for your child to repeat that behaviour. They know they get something positive from it. If we respond to negative behaviour in a negative way, it just becomes a cyclic effect. So try and reinforce the positive behaviours. You can use behaviour charts if that works for your child. Think about how many steps they have to achieve. You know, younger children, smaller steps to achieve a goal. Older children, you know, it could be that if they consistently complete those daily tasks that are visual for them, by the end of the week they achieve whatever. But think about how many steps, make sure it's achievable. Don't take it away, just don't give them. If they don't do it, just don't give them that reinforcement. We don't want to be taking things off our reward chart. That's not necessarily how we would manage things. We want to praise those positive behaviours. So they're just some ideas about how to establish boundaries and routines at home.
Thank you. Okay, so we're just going to move on to the sleep section now. But I know it's early in the morning and everybody's had their school run rush, but I think it'd be really nice if we could just do a little group activity. So if you can join onto a table and we'll choose one person on your table to do the writing. I just want you to have 5 minutes to talk about what kind of things you do at bedtime to help your bedtime routine, or what you think you should do, because we all know what we should do, and when we've got children it's not always as easy to do what we know we should be doing. So I'm just going to hand out a sheet of paper for each table and some pens, and just ask you to have 5 minutes to just come up with 5 ideas of what you think makes a good bedtime routine. A podcast, reading, and no gadgets before bed, yeah? Okay. Making sure that your child knows 30 minutes in advance that it's going to be bedtime, really good. So going back to what Bea was talking about, so that preparation and understanding. Bath to calm down, really good. Anyone got anything they want to add? Same bedtime routine every night? Absolutely. Definitely, and it again goes back to what Miss B said. about having the routines, which is really important. So moving back to why sleep is so important. So when we're sleeping and we're in that state of rest, it's when our body has the chance to regenerate. And not just, it's the brain, it's every part of the body that's regenerating. So as it says on here, it's restoration of the body. And the things that you've learned in the day is so fast, and for students and children especially, there is so much information to take in, and it's all gone into their brains, and then they've got to go home, they've got to do other routines. So that time when they lay down to bed, if in that perfect state of rest, is when they can actually process everything that they've taken in for the day, and they can retain the information that's needed. And if they go to bed in a heightened state of anxiety or distress, then that processing won't work. They're not going to process any of it, because all that's going to happen is the in-the-moment issues, the things that have made them anxious, the things that have made them upset, that's going to take over. So you've lost all of that information and all of that learning from another day. So that's why sleep is so important, and a calm state of sleep. As you can see on here, it says 30% of children, so that's up to the age of 16, are not having enough sleep, and then 75% of teenagers. I mean, that's a massive percentage. And I know it's really hard when you've got teenagers, because obviously they know best. They know better than we do. So who are we to tell them how much sleep they need? But of course, we do know that they need it. And even more so because they're about to sit exams. The amount of subjects that they're covering each day and the extent of the subjects is far broader than what they're doing when they're in primary as well. And then we know that they're going to have exams at the end of that, and they're going to have to retain that information and extract that information. So if they're not getting the right amount of sleep, then they're not going to be able to retain it, and it's going to have an impact, not just on their education, but actually on their adult life. It's going to have an impact on the rest of their lives. So although when you say to them, you need to go to bed now, you need to get some sleep, and it's a bit light-hearted, the impact of that is far-reaching, and it's really important that we get that message across to them. And so sleep deprivation, as you can see, it stifles the immune system. So it means if you're not getting enough sleep, your immune system's going to be lower, you're going to be susceptible to germs, to illness, and again, that in turn is going to have an impact on your ability to learn and to retain information. Now, obviously, these are things that happen through maybe not having a healthy sleep pattern, but then you do have sleep disorders, and that comes into a different category, because sleep disorders are things that you may not be able to fix with having a really good bedtime routine. You may have to actually seek further advice, external advice, see a doctor, a paediatrician, depending on the age of your child, because nightmares, night terrors, which are, a more extreme form of nightmares, that for some children who experience them, they feel so real, and they are trapped in that moment, and they are trapped in that night terror, and it feels like it's happening for them. And that's the time when you do really need to think about seeking some additional help or some external support or medical support. Insomnia, again, is something we think as adults that we would have, but you wouldn't necessarily think that children would have it, but they do. We work with children that do suffer with insomnia and that do have to have sleep aids to help them to sleep. Some children have to have a hormone supplement, which helps them to produce the hormone which their brain doesn't naturally produce. So when we go to sleep, you're producing melatonin, which is going to make you into that sleepy state and restful. Some children, teenagers, adults, won't produce that naturally in their own body, and they will have to have a supplement that will help them to produce enough to get to that point where they can drift off to sleep. Otherwise, they're in that state of awakeness, anxiety. I know I should be asleep, and we know we do it ourselves. You're laying there, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, you know you've got to get up in 2 hours' time. So the more you think about that, the more anxious you get, and then the less you're going to sleep. And that happens for children. It's exactly the same for them. So it's about making everything as calm, as peaceful for them. And of course, sleepwalking and sleep talking. Sleepwalking is obviously something that can have quite an impact on safety. So if that's something that you're experiencing, it's really important that you do seek help or come and speak to us, and we can give you some advice and signpost you to people that can help you, because, sleepwalking can be quite extreme. I've worked with families before with a child that had actually let themselves out of the house and gone all the way to the beach and was still asleep. and was just lucky enough to be found at the beach by, you know, a bystander who was trustworthy. So it's, these are all really serious things. So don't ever feel like it's a minor thing. Please come and speak to us. So sleep hygiene. This is kind of like the new buzzword. This is what we're using now, sleep hygiene. And basically, it just describes good sleep habits for children and for adults. So it's the things that we have to do to make sure that we're having a healthy bedtime routine. So these are just the basics. So having a screen time cut-off. So making sure that you're very clear. Again, back to the boundaries. Really clear about when that cut-off time is. And a blue light. So the blue lights, the backlights on the devices, they all stimulate the brain and they all make your brain want to stay awake longer. So you have to have a period of time where you can have the calming period so that you can go to sleep. Exercising during awake hours. So actually, you know, the school day is long. We know that because we do it ourselves. So when your children get home and, you know, you've given them a snack and they're exhausted and they just want to maybe chill out, go on their iPad, watch the TV, which is equally fine, but if they're not having some exercise, because a lot of the daytime they're in class, so they're sat, they're learning. So if you can actually build in some sort of exercise routine, maybe before bedtime, you know, a couple of hours before, go for a walk, have a run around the garden, you know, do something together as a family. Again, sticking to the schedule, making sure that you stick to that bedtime regardless. Making sure that they're not scared at bedtime, because that's, no child is going to go to sleep if they go to sleep scared. So you need to make sure that they feel safe in their bedroom, they know that you're there, you're going to be there if they need you, and then making sure you've got the routine in place. So creating that calm bedtime routine. So a sleep schedule. So a really good idea is to refer back to what Bea was saying about having a visual. And we've got something to hand out for you, which is, it's a very basic one, but this is a bedtime routine. So you can take one of these with you, you can use it. You may have a different routine and you may want to adapt it, but it's the starting point. And what you need to be looking for is, obviously you've got your timings. Make it very clear what time this routine is going to start. And use the same activity each time. So it might be that you'll take them up for a bath, that you will make them a warm drink, maybe some warm milk, and then you will go to bed and read a story, and then you will sit with them and read a story, or you might talk about their day, and then put some calming music on. It's not okay to have the devices in the bedroom, no matter how much they say, Mum, Dad, I promise I won't touch it, you know they will. It's just like us, if our phone's there and we hear it buzz, we're going to pick it up. So just put it out of reach. Don't even have it there so they don't have to worry. TVs in bedrooms, you know, that it's not going to work. Even if you turn it off, you know, it's still there. It's still giving off that element of activity. So if you can avoid having a TV in the bedroom, please do. And also, so the calming music, you can have a night light. So you don't want bright light. You want it so that there's a very dim, yellowish night light so they can make out what's around them, because a child doesn't want to lay in the pitch black, because that's really scary, because they start to see things and imagine things. So you want to make sure they can see what's there, but it's not actually going to stimulate them and keep them awake. So you've got your bedtime routine, you've done your bedtime story, and you've calmed them. Sometimes just sitting, stroking their head is enough to get them off to sleep, but it's really important to stick to it. And when you go downstairs or wherever you go afterwards and they call out and they get up, it's okay to go back, but you go back and say the same. It is bedtime, okay? You are safe, I am here, you need to sleep, this is to make you better. So the bedroom itself, making sure that it's not too stimulating, so it's not got loads of things going on. I mean, I know children love their posters, they like to have their characters, but just trying to make it so it's a calm environment, so that when they lay down, they feel like they're in that safe, calm place. They have snack, and somebody else said about a snack before bed, which is absolutely fine, but obviously we don't want it to be a snack that's going to stimulate them. So nothing with any caffeine in it. We want to reduce any intake of sugar so it doesn't stimulate their brain. A snack could be something, you know, maybe a piece of toast, with just a bit of butter on it, but something that's not going to actually wake them up more. Children don't sleep if they're hungry. So if you put your child to bed and they've got a grumbly tummy, then they're not going to settle, because that's going to take over. So you just need to make sure that they've got their tummies not over full, but they're not hungry. Again, there's the caffeine, so avoid that. Obviously for us as well, because we know if we drink caffeine, if you drink it less than half an hour before you try to go to sleep, it's not going to work. You're going to be overstimulated. So an evening activity, which is something maybe you might build into your routine. You might do a family time, half an hour family time. If you've got other children, sit down and play a board game, something that's not too exciting and stimulating, but something that you all do together. So you've had that family time, and then you can go to the bedtime routine. Again, avoiding the television, 30 minutes, that's it. Any screen time, 30 minutes, and then it needs to stop. And naps. So this is something, obviously younger children will still have their afternoon naps, but as they get older, you need to try and break the nap, because that's going to break into their sleep pattern. And I know that when your children come home from school, the first thing they're probably going to want to do is lay down and have a nap, as probably we would all do, you know, for that amount of time and that amount of stimulus throughout the day. But as they get older, that nap's going to break their nighttime pattern. So what you'll find is they might have, even if it's a half an hour nap after school, that half an hour is going to knock on to the evening time, and then your children are going to be staying up until 9:30, which in turn is not healthy for you, because as adults, you also need your own time. So you need to have that child time, that family time, and then you need to have your adult time so that you can wind down and relax, because the next day it all starts again. And exercise, as we said, if you can build in some form of exercise in the day, then that will help to make them tired of a night time. So this is just a really interesting one, because it's how many hours of recommended sleep for different ages. So you've got infants who are 4 to 12 months, which is 12 to 16 hours, and that's obviously they have their naps throughout the day. Then you've got children 1 to 2 years, 11 to 14 hours. So our children, for the people that are in this room, are going to fit into these brackets here. So even a teenager from 13 to 18 should still be looking to have up to 10 hours sleep a night. And I mean, I don't know any teenager that does that unless that's at the weekend, when actually you want them to get up and do something and they don't. So it's just really interesting to see, you know, and children 6 to 12, so that's the whole of primary. If your child's in primary, it's saying they should be having up to 12 hours sleep a night. And if your children do have that, fantastic. But the timings of our school day and the length of the time that we have to do these things, I'd be surprised if many children manage to get their 12 hours, but this is what's recommended. Excuse me. Okay, just going back to diet. So healthy eating, as it says, leads to healthy sleeping. So making sure you have a really balanced diet. So not too much sugar, not too many sweets, crisps. You need to have lots of fruit and vegetables built in. As it says again, low in sugar and fats. You don't want a heavily salty diet, because that's also not good for you, and that does make you sluggish. And again, avoid eating just before going to bed, but if you can, build that snack time in so it's part of your routine half an hour before. So this is just a couple of ideas. So this is the one that you've got to take home with you, just for an idea. And then this one over here is like a checklist for older children. So you can put things on here of what they need to do at bedtime, and you can make it into a reward chart. So actually, they're taking responsibility and ownership of their sleep time routine. They can write it with you. So you can sit down together and say, so what do you need to do at night time for bedtime? You know, what's the actual routine you want? You can buy the stickers, and each night you can give them a sticker if they've met that, and you can come to an agreement at the weekend. They might get some extra pocket money, they might earn a little bit of extra screen time, or they might get to go out somewhere, but it's kind of a two-way road then. So you're respecting the fact that, you know, they are a bit older and they can take responsibility for it, so you're giving them that, but at the same time, you're working together. So this is a really useful one for older children. And then if you're really struggling with your children's sleeping routines and patterns, you can use a sleep diary. So as I said, all of these slides, if you've put your email address onto the sheet, so if you came in a bit later, please make sure before you leave, your email address goes onto our sheet, because we will send out all of the slides and then you can use this. So it's basically monitoring it for the week and then seeing where the areas are that they're having difficulty. So what time they went to bed, you know, was it different every night? There's our problem straight away, we know that. Did you stick to the routine? Did you break one of those bits of the routine? You know, did you just skip the reading, or did you skip the bath or the drink? That's where your problem could be. So this will really help you to monitor it. And if moving forward you're addressing all of these areas and yet you're still having difficulties with that sleep routine, then would be the time to think, well, maybe we could seek some further advice. So it's just really about you having something tangible to take with you and saying, we have been monitoring this, we have been trying, you know, this isn't actually working now. What are our next steps? And so there it says, so when to seek further support. So, you know, if your child has any disabilities or additional needs, that can affect their sleep, particularly if your child has ADHD or autism. So that will affect the chemical balance in their brain. It will affect the way that they're able to go to sleep. And again, as I said, whether they produce enough of the natural hormone to make you fall sleepy. If they've got any emotional issues, maybe, you know, it can be anything down to if you've had a sort of a relative to visit and they've gone, a grandparent's been staying with you and they've left, or they've had a pet, you know, something's happened to it, anything at all, things that obviously as adults we can deal with much easier, but they have a really big impact on our children, and they stay in their minds and they will sit and think about them. And even in school sometimes, you know, you'll speak to children and they'll say something, you know, that you wouldn't even think had mattered. Like my auntie was phoning my mum last night, and she's really sad because her dog's not well. That was a conversation overheard by a child of their parent on the phone, which the parent probably didn't even know the child overheard. But that child's come to school and is anxious about that, because children pick up and hear everything. So it's just to be really aware and alert. Again, night terrors, this is something that you do need to seek advice. If your child is waking up and they're completely distressed, you can't bring them out of that sleep or that state of distress. You need to seek advice for that. And then any other persistent issues that are concerning you. Because there is help out there. There are people to help you. You don't have to do it on your own. So I had a little quiz just to see if you was all paying attention. But I don't know if that's actually fair, but just really to think about it. So these are the ages of our students, so recommended sleep time. 2 things that happen to the body during sleep. I mean, we all know what sleep deprivation stifles, which is your immune system. So just thinking about, those are the key areas that I really want you to take away from this and be thinking about. And then I'm going to hand you over to Miss Vicky, who's going to be talking about relationships and connections.
Good morning, everybody. Your children will know me as Miss Victoria, because my surname's a little bit hard to pronounce. So if they tell you Miss Victoria, that's who I am. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about relationships and connection with your children. There's quite a lot of information on the slides. I want to expand on some of that a little bit, but also just to emphasize some of the things that you probably have an instinct about already or know that you should be doing. And often in these sessions or in our own training that we do at school, it acts as a reminder. But I do appreciate when I'm standing up here how busy our lives are and how everybody in Dubai is pulled in a million different directions. So the aim is not to make you feel guilty for doing these things. It's just to act as a little reminder to do the best that you can. So relationships and connection are what we all want, whether we're a child or whether we're an adult. But children need that relationship and connection to help them to grow up into healthy adults. When they feel safe, when they have a deep relationship with their caregivers, and sometimes that's not always the mum or the father, it depends on the family setup, but having that deep relationship with a caregiver where they feel they can really trust that person to keep them safe, and that person's on their side and rooting for them, that makes a big difference in a child and then as we grow into an adult's life. So planning ways to spend quality time together and making it priority. Time. Time is very short for all of us, and I do get that. So I would encourage you to think of ways that you both can benefit from that quality time. You know, you might not want to sit in a movie theatre and watch a child's movie for 2 hours, but you might want to go to the beach and spend some time walking up and down the beach, swimming in the sea, or doing something that is beneficial to both of you. So work out what that is. And I think it's really important that it's not just the whole family that does that, but if you have a number of children, you will know your children. You will know that some may need a little bit more of your time, a little bit more of mummy's time, a little bit more of daddy's time. So you will know your children and you'll be able to judge, do we do this activity as a family, or is it something I do with my daughter by myself? You know, I cycle a lot, and I see fathers cycling with their sons at the weekend when I go out cycling, and they're there every single week, and they're happy and smiling, and they're having a great time. Maybe dad's cycling a bit slower than he normally would, but what a wonderful way to model a healthy life to a child and make that connection and share something that you're passionate about. So the three most important times in the day for children when they need that connection and they need that reassurance is when they get up in the morning before school. And I know how hectic that can be, but as Jane was alluding to earlier, we hear lots of little conversations from children going on. And it's quite surprising sometimes how they react to things that have happened in their day before they come to school, and how that impacts the rest of their day and how they settle into their routines in school. Things that seem absolutely minor to us often have a much greater significance to children. And it's very important that we don't dismiss their concerns. Equally, we don't want to turn them into more of a drama and to make them more of a concern, but we need to recognize them and help support them through. Modeling our thinking, modeling, well, you know, you're thinking this, but what if that did? You know, just talking them through it, giving them that time and making an authentic connection with them. So yes, children hear and see everything, and you would be very surprised some of the things they come out with. Also, and none of us are saints, and I'm not either, but children see and hear the way you behave and the way you interact and the way you negotiate the challenges that you face in your day. And they're watching and learning from that. Even when you're not explicitly mentoring and coaching your children, they're picking up on what you are doing. If you respond to a spider, a simple example, as being a very scary thing, chances are your children will also view a spider as a very scary thing. So going back to letting them know that you understand and you validate their feelings. So this happens on a number of different levels. Quite often you see a child fall down and pick them up and dust them off, and it's like, let's go on our way. So that's not really so much what we're meaning here. We're meaning more like when a child is feeling anxious, when a child comes to you and says, "Mummy, at school today, my friends were mean to me." And it's very easy for us to say, "It's okay. Don't worry about it, I'm sure it would be better tomorrow." But actually, that child has reached out to you and wants to have a conversation with you. And you don't need to add any judgment to that interpretation that they've already made, but you can guide them, ask them questions. Well, why do you think that? You know, what could you do to make that better? Support them with positive responses rather than saying, "Oh, well, that's a shame, your friend's mean." Because if you're negative about it, then that's just going to perpetuate the situation and make it harder for them to deal with. So we want to ensure that a child's narrative, their internal dialogue inside their own head, is as positive as it can be. Meal times are a great way to connect and share as a family. I do know that's challenging as well, but I'm sure we can all think back to when we were younger, and some of our memories will be based around shared meal times, shared family events where we all come together to celebrate over food. Children tend to relax when they're eating, so things might come out that wouldn't necessarily be spoken about openly at other times. And developing your child's intrinsic motivation, you don't always want to be the one saying, "Wow, Mum's really proud of you, you did really well." You want to say, "So how do you feel? Do you feel proud of yourself? How does it feel now that you've achieved that? What would you like to do next? What would you like to do in the future to be your next achievement, your next challenge?" Thank you. Helping your child with their emotions. Another current buzzword that you'll probably see all over social media parenting pages is co-regulation. Now, co-regulation involves 3 types of caregiver support. It's that warm relationship that we were just talking about. It's having an environment which allows that. And one of the things that Jane was talking about is a sleep environment. And also, it's about coaching your children and letting them know how you feel towards them and reinforcing that relationship. Calmness is not always the end goal of regulation. Regulation is about being in control and being connected to this moment and understanding and reflecting on what we are feeling. Sometimes it's okay to be angry. Sometimes it's okay to be sad. So the calmness we think of as being deep breathing, don't feel anything very strongly. That's not always what our goal should be. And we need to keep the way that we react to situations. We need to do it in a mindful way. But if your child sees you faking calmness when actually you're upset, then that child's going to get distressed because they're getting mixed messages. A child knows when their parent is upset. They can tell by all the signals that you send off that you might not even be aware of. But if you are smiling and being calm, they're going to see that as a mixed message, and that's going to make their brain, twig something is wrong and make them feel a little bit anxious. So it's okay to say to your child, Mummy's a bit upset at the moment because the eggs broke when she took them out of the car. Just explain it. So regulation is more about being in control and recognizing and identifying feelings and not allowing those feelings to take over completely, being aware of them. It's like, I think often we get to a point where we know, okay, my anxiety is taking over now, this is silly, I need to rein it back in. And that's kind of what we're talking about, having that little conversation with yourself, but instead of having it with yourself, have it with your child. But hopefully you never say to yourself, it's silly to feel that way, and just dismiss it. You address it, you deal with it. Because you do know that if you just dismiss it, it's going to come creeping back later to haunt you. Space and time to calm down. We have lots of children in the school, and none of those two children are the same. And one of the things that we do, like the sleep diary, is we keep a diary to see how children react in different situations. Some children, to calm down, need an adult sat right beside them. Some children, to calm down, might need a hand on their back so they can physically feel that connection. Other children might need you to totally step away and back off, and then they can calm themselves down. So don't feel a need to always rush in and be right next to your child. Just take a few minutes, just try and sense what they want and what works best. I'm just mentioning the authentic connection there at the bottom. Thank you. So part of being connected to our feelings and being mindful in the moment is developing our own sense of independence and empowerment. We all know at work, if our day is managed to the nth degree, that's not such an enjoyable working environment. We like to have some independence, we like to feel empowered to make our own decisions and be able to achieve things in the way that we want to achieve them. So very much when they're younger, I'm sure a lot of you have experienced the terrible twos or the trouble threesomes, whatever the terms are for the different ages, but that doesn't stop as children get older. And I'm sure some of you probably even agree that it continues quite often into adulthood. But children are trying to establish their own identities. They will go through phases of pushing you away, and then they might become a little bit clingy for a while. They're kind of looking for you to put boundaries in place, maybe testing you. They want to know that no matter what they do, you're still going to be there to support and love them. So don't take it personally. Don't take it personally. Nothing children do is aimed at us personally. Because there is so much emotion involved, it's sometimes hard for us to remember that. But children aren't deliberately, we talk about children trying to manipulate us or trying to control us. Maybe they are, but there's a reason why they're doing that. All behavior is communication. If they are trying to manipulate you or are trying to control you, why are they doing that? What else is going on elsewhere in their lives? So always try and understand that when a child is behaving in a way which you don't appreciate, it's because they're going through some kind of distress or some kind of misunderstanding of their own. And maybe sometimes take a step back yourself. If you feel yourself getting very upset, let yourself calm down and connect with your own emotions before you respond to your child. It's like in the aeroplanes when they say put on your mask before you put on the child's mask. You can't support your child if you're not in the right place to do that. So this also talks about not just independence in terms of our emotions, but also independence in terms of how we go through our lives, developing routines. There are many times when I'm in a class and a child will come up to me and say, "Miss, there's a pencil on the floor." And I'm like, "Okay, what do you think you could do?" I can see, I'm sure you get that at home with socks or things like this. Like, what do you think you could do? And it's independence even at that level. You know, we would want the child to know they can pick up the pencil and put it back in a pencil case or put it on a table and it will, you know, be moved later. So it's just getting them to be a little bit aware of their surroundings and thinking of things that they can do to support themselves and, as they get older, to help other people. And the goal is cooperation rather than obedience. We don't want obedient children. We might want an obedient dog, but we don't want an obedient child. We want a child to understand, this is the behaviour we expect of you, this is why I expect it of you, and then for them to work with you to achieve that behaviour. And also, as they get older, let them articulate why they might not agree with you. You don't want a child who agrees with everybody all the time. That can lead to quite a lot of problems in the future. If they fall into a peer group or a friendship group that has different values from themselves, but they're not prepared to step up and say, "No, I don't agree with that," you can imagine where that kind of thing goes. So allowing your child to speak up and to share their ideas with you is important, in a respectful way, of course. And then provide them with options. As much as we say children aren't small adults, they kind of are in a way, in that they're humans, the same as us. And we know we don't like to be told, "Drink your coffee." We would prefer somebody to say, "Would you like some tea or would you like some coffee?" You know, or we're going out, "Do you want to have tea or coffee?" But just that little, giving them options. Keep it open. Show them the same respect you would show your partner or your parents or your siblings or your close friends. And yes, sometimes you may need to anticipate. For example, you know, we talked about routines earlier. We all know that sometimes routines don't go quite the way we want them to. As an adult, you'll probably have realized at 8 o'clock in the morning when you got up, the rain's going to spoil our plan to go to the safari park. The child might not realize that. So explain to them, anticipate things that are going to happen, and let the children know as well, so they're not caught by surprises. So this is just a chart here. There are loads and loads of different ones like this that you can find online, which talks about the different chores that you can start to involve children in at different ages. Obviously, not all of them are going to be suitable in your household. Maybe not all of them are going to be suitable for your child. But it's really just to get you thinking, what can I do to help my child understand a little bit more about how to be independent themselves? But also there's a Harvard study which shows that work ethic is one of the greatest predictors of success in life. And a great way to develop work ethic is just to give the child some little chores around home. And a young child, generally below 6 years of age, they love helping mummy and daddy. You know, that's why we get them mud kitchens, and that's why we get them toy cars, and that's why we get them pushchairs, toy pushchairs, because they love mimicking their parents. So developing those habits in young children means later in life, it might be easier to get those teenagers to put their socks in the laundry and make their beds. Yeah, chores for pocket money, be careful. I don't think I need to elaborate on that anymore. That's obviously a personal family choice, and I know some families would be like, but I don't want to give them pocket money for nothing. That's fine, but just be aware of what you're getting into with that. And then look for opportunities when you're doing these chores to mentor and bond with your children. I'm on a Facebook group that is all about what's for dinner in Dubai, it's called. And there's often a gentleman on there who does cooking with his son at the weekends, and he posts the pictures and the foods and the things. What a lovely way to bond with your child. You know, again, you're doing something which needs to be done anyway, so it's not an extra amount of time you're having to find. And children love that. And they're so proud when everybody goes, wow, this is the best taco, you know, you've made a great taco. And just a few, so I haven't listed a huge amount here because I honestly prefer parents and everybody to find out and research their own resources. But what I find really, really useful is podcasts. There are some amazing parent podcasts out there on a huge range of topics that you can listen to while you're driving, while you're doing multiple different things. And they really have some interesting insights. And if you don't like the bit or it's not relevant, you can just fast forward to the next bit. This book is quite popular at the moment, so some of you may be familiar with it. Anyway, I will hand over now to my colleague Nick, and if you have questions later, please find me and I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you all here today. I'm Mr. Nick. I work in the secondary school. I'm the Special Educational Needs Coordinator. So yeah, it's nice to see you all here today. So one of the things one area of well-being that I think is really important in everybody's lives really, and especially young people's lives, is device time, screen time. And there's a few reasons for that. I mean, as a young person, especially teenage age, the connections in your brain are still forming. So device time and screen time can have an impact on that. We'll go through in a minute. When you wake up, if you expose yourself to your device in the morning, it can actually lead you to be very stressed throughout the day. And also, you know, in today's world, I know a lot of my friends, for example, they're working from home on a Friday all across the world, really. So I think it's really important that our young people learn some skills about how to manage, self-regulate the device time, especially as we're moving to a more digital age, and we don't know how long we're going to be coming into work for. We might go back to COVID days, you never know, where we're just working from home. So, and it's also, device time is having an impact on, as I said, our mental well-being. So if you wake up, I'm guilty of this as well every morning. I wake up and the first thing I do is check my Facebook, check my Instagram, check my WhatsApp. And it can lead to me feeling quite anxious during the day, actually, and just give me another level of stress that I don't need. And I don't know, I've seen research before that says it's actually changing us physically as well, because if you imagine if you're holding your phone day in, day out, that then has an impact on how you hold the pen and the pencil in the classroom. So our hands are actually changing as well. So device time and screen time is having a massive impact on our lives, really. So I saw this, I remembered this when I was putting this presentation together. I remember that I listened to some news, and if you wake up and the first thing you do is check your, as I said, check your WhatsApp, check your Facebook, then it really does disrupt your chance of starting your day with a calm mind. So I hope you can agree how important it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through, you've got this sheet in front of you, which is some top tips for how you can help to manage our young people's device time and screen time. So I'm just going to quickly run through them. Before I go through this, I mean, one thing that I've tried in the past is you can actually get prescription glasses, which have, they'll take away the blue glare, because you get a lot of blue glare from these screens, iPads, laptops, and that can give you headaches. So I've tried that in the past, but I've not stuck to it, but I know that's good. So yeah, monitor your screen time, maybe give your young person some limits on how long they can use it after school, and it's important to check what they're actually doing it on as well. That's very important as well. On to the next slide, yeah. Yeah, so make sure they're getting regular breaks. I know that in most schools around the world, we are using a lot of laptops for learning, whether that's in lesson time, or whether that's through homework. It's a bit different from when I was in school, but so make sure we're setting regular breaks for them. So if they're going to work for 40 minutes, then give them a 10-minute break, for example. stretch it out. This is one thing that I suffer from personally. Posture when our young people are sitting at a laptop. It's actually quite bad for your upper back and neck. I know that I've seen in the past that you can get higher tables, because the laptop is supposed to be right in front of your eyes, and most of the time we're looking down, so I know that's quite bad for posture. So if they are working at home, you could maybe perhaps buy one of these. I think you can probably get them on Amazon. So it's like a little table that you put the laptop on top, so you're looking at the same height. I think you can't get away from screens, can you, these days? I mean, I got in a taxi yesterday. I don't know if you've seen, but they've put screens in the back of taxis now. Have you seen that? So I've just been at work all day looking at a screen, and then you get into and you look at another screen. So yeah, so I think I'm a big believer in young people having different activities to do after school. So encouraging some social activities, and getting some physical exercise as well. That will help. As I said, your sitting position. I need to get better at this as well. Actually, not have I think Miss Jane said this before. Not having your phone in your room when you're trying to sleep as well, because you're always tempted. I mean, I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm tempted to check what my favourite football team score is. So it's not always the best thing in the middle of the night to have your phone around. So yeah, I think you can actually. I know they do it on iPads, but you can actually see how much time your young person or your child has been on the device. So maybe you could have a look at that, and it will give you a good indication of how long they're spending. I wouldn't like to look at mine, to be honest with you. And also, I think in the holiday time, we've got a half-term break coming up in 2 weeks. And I think it really works for me if I just switch off for a day. And I do feel a lot better, actually. Especially if I'm not checking it first thing in the morning. I'm not always on WhatsApp. I really do feel a lot better. So yeah, so we're just limiting how much device time we'll have, really. That's the aim of this. So I'm not sure how we're doing for time, but I did have a quiz we could do. Have you all, we're going to still go ahead with that, Miss? Yeah, the quiz, do you think? Yeah. Yeah, have you used, there's an app called Kahoot. I don't know if I'm sure that your child knows about that, but if you could download that for me. And it's just a few, we might not get through all the questions, but if you download Kahoot, and we should be able to put the code on, it's a quick quiz about screen time. So I just thought it'd be something nice and interactive for you to do, and it gives you immediate feedback as well. So, okay. Yeah, so that needs to be on. So if you go to your app store and download the Kahoot app, and then it'll ask you to put your name in and your code. It's K-A-H-O-O-T. Kahoot. O-O-T, yeah. Okay. So, yeah, so it should say, you could put personal, couldn't you, or T, that's okay. And we've got the code there as well, so 6238502. Okay. It's here, 6238502. And this is where it all goes wrong. So what name is going to pop up on here? So.
I know the questions weren't exactly what we were expecting, but I think it gave us all a good laugh for a Wednesday morning, and it ended on a happy note. So thank you all so much for coming in, and we look forward to seeing you all again. And if you had a chance to fill in any of the other areas or topics you'd like to hear about, please do let us know. And please do come to see us if you've got any concerns about anything or just want some advice or signposting to any other services. Thank you all for your time. It's lovely to see you. Have a great day.